Hello and welcome to the Learner Characteristics Inventory Training. My name is Stephanie Thompson. I am the Program Lead for Indiana's Alternate Measure, or IAM, and the Alternate Assessment Specialist for the Indiana Department of Education. Today's presentation will cover the following topics: the purpose and use of the Learner Characteristics Inventory, an overview of the LCI, the 11 learner characteristics, a summary of the students with the most significant intellectual disabilities, how to analyze LCI data, or what does your students' data tell you, and where to find additional resources associated with the LCI. The Learner Characteristics Inventory is a set of questions about a student's learning. It is completed by an educator, usually the test administrator, prior to the administration of the alternate assessment, in this case, IAM. The LCI can be used at the local level as another data point to ensure students are taking the appropriate assessment. It can also be used to find similarities and differences between students taking the alternate assessment at the local level with students taking the same assessment in other Indiana schools. The LCI includes 11 questions or indicators that must be answered about the student. The educator simply chooses the response under each indicator that best describes the student or the service the student currently receives. The LCI must be completed annually for each student participating in the alternate assessment. The 11 learner characteristics include the following: primary classroom setting, use of assistive technology, expressive communication, receptive language, motor, hearing, vision, engagement, mathematics, reading, and writing. While students with significant intellectual disabilities account for only 1% of the student population, it is important to note that this 1% is the most diverse population of students. The summary on this slide does not describe all students with significant intellectual disabilities. However, through the LCI, we have been able to determine that this summary does describe most students in this population. Students with significant disabilities have varied levels of expressive, receptive language use. However, most students use symbolic language and oral speech and are able to follow 1 to 2 step directions presented through words with or without additional cues. This population of students is more likely to have multiple or complex disabilities, including motor disabilities, sensory disabilities, or health concerns. Students with significant intellectual disabilities can typically read basic sight words and solve simple mathematics problems with a calculator and other appropriate accommodations and supports. The first indicator addresses the student's primary classroom setting. This would likely be based on the percentage of the school day spent in the general education setting, or the student's main modifications and accommodation requirements. In 2019, over 62% of Indiana students taking the alternate assessment attended a regular school in a self-contained special education classroom with some non-academic inclusion, for example, art, music, and PE. This response is indicated in bold print on the slide. The second indicator addresses the types of assistive technology students will use on the IAM assessment. Permissive mode is an accommodation that allows for assistive technology devices to be used while testing. When permissive mode is turned on, outside applications can be used while testing in the secure browser. Some students taking IAM may require eye gaze boards or other devices in order to communicate an answer. Over half of the students taking IM in 2019 used some form of assistive technology on the assessment to assist with communicating an answer. For the 2019-2020 school year, educators will be able to select multiple responses to this question. The third indicator addresses expressive communication. Most students taking the alternate assessment use symbolic language to communicate as indicated in bold print. This can be through verbal or written words, signs, braille, or a language-based augmentative system. There are some students with significant intellectual disabilities who do not have a way to communicate answers to assessment questions. For this reason, there is a way for educators to end IM after an attempt to answer 5 test items has been made with no response from the student. These students will communicate basic needs and wants through cries, facial expressions, and changes in their muscle tone, but oftentimes these cues are not consistent. The fourth indicator addresses receptive language. Most students with significant intellectual disabilities are able to follow 1 to 2 step directions presented through words that are either spoken, signed, printed, or any combination of these, as indicated in bold. However, many of these students may require additional cues in order to follow these directions. The fifth indicator addresses motor skills. As mentioned earlier in this presentation, students with significant intellectual disabilities are more likely to have multiple or complex disabilities, which may include motor disabilities. For this reason, it is important that the alternate assessment include ways for students to alternatively respond to test items. This might be through the eye gaze board or other assistive technology. It could also be through a verbal response. This characteristic alone does not signify a significant intellectual disability. The sixth indicator addresses hearing. Hearing loss is another possible characteristic of students with significant intellectual disabilities, but alone does not signify a significant intellectual disability. Students who are deaf or hard of hearing may require an interpreter for sign language or a sound amplification system in order to complete the IM assessment. The seventh indicator addresses the student's vision. Another possible characteristic of students with significant intellectual disabilities is low vision and blindness, but again, this alone does not signify a significant intellectual disability. Students who are blind or have low vision may require a braille booklet or a low vision script so the test administrator can describe all IM graphics. A large print form or assistive technology to magnify or enlarge the screen may also be required if testing online. Zoom is an embedded online feature that all students can use while taking IM. The eighth indicator addresses student engagement. 58% of students who participated in IM in 2019 were able to initiate and sustain social interactions. 30% of students were able to respond to social interaction but are not able to sustain or initiate this interaction. Both of these responses are indicated in bold print on the slide. Fewer than 12% of students were only able to alert to others or not able to alert to others at all. Because IM is based on the grade level alternate academic standards or content connectors, the indicators that address mathematics, reading, and writing can help determine how the student might perform on IM. The ninth indicator addresses mathematics. 49% of students who participated in IM in 2019 were able to complete basic computational procedures, including addition and subtraction, as indicated in bold. Only 10% of students were able to apply computational procedures to solve problems. The ability to solve mathematical problems at this level may be an indicator that the student does not have a significant intellectual disability and should be considered during the case conference committee meeting. The 10th indicator addresses the student's reading abilities. Nearly 36% of students who participated in IAM in 2019 were able to read basic sight words, simple sentences, directions, bullets, and/or lists in print or braille, as indicated in bold print. Nearly 19% of students who participated in IAM in 2019 are aware of text or braille, can make letter distinctions, and/or tell a story from the pictures that is not linked to the text. Nearly 14% of students who participated in IAM in 2019 had no awareness of print or braille. Only 4% of students who completed IAM in 2019 were able to fluently read with critical understanding. The ability to read at this level may be an indicator that the student does not have a significant intellectual disability and should be considered during the case conference committee meeting. The final indicator addresses the student's writing abilities. Over 48% of students who participated in IAM in 2019 were able to write words or sentences from a model or use word cards or sentence strips to compose a complete sentence as indicated in bold. Nearly 15% of students can use pictorial representations to convey thoughts, write alphabet letters, or their own name. Nearly 15% of students can locate print or recognize their name in print. Fewer than 13% of students have no observable awareness of print. Less than 10% of students who participated in IAM in 2019 were able to convey thoughts in complete sentences using correct spelling, grammar, and writing mechanics. The ability to write at this level may be an indicator that the student does not have a significant intellectual disability and should be considered during the case conference committee meeting. Here are some questions members of the case conference committee can contemplate after the learner characteristics inventory has been completed for the student. Do the indicators selected for the student reinforce that the student has a significant intellectual disability? If not, this may indicate the student does not meet all 4 participation criteria and is not eligible to participate in the alternate assessment. The case conference committee should re-review the participation criteria to ensure the student has been accurately placed. How do the students' characteristics compare to the summary of students with the most significant intellectual disabilities? Again, the 1% population is a very diverse population of students. Not all test administrators will be able to answer these questions the same for all students. However, you should find some similarities between your student and the summary of students with the most significant intellectual disabilities on slide 6. How did the students' characteristics compare to those who participated in IAM in 2019? Think about how you responded to the LCI questions for your student. Are these responses typical as compared to how educators responded for students taking IAM in 2019? If your student appears to be at a higher level than most, the case conference committee may want to consider whether the alternate assessment is the best option for this student. If a student has previously been assessed on the alternate assessment and the case conference committee now feels this may not be the best placement, the student can be moved back on diploma track. Unselecting the 4 participation criteria from the IEP will provide the student with access to the general education assessments for the 2019-2020 school year. For more information about this transition, please contact Sarah Moore at s mohr@doe.in.gov. Additional resources, such as the Alternate Assessment Participation FAQ and the Alternate Assessment Participation Flowchart, can help your CASE conference committee decide whether or not a student should take the alternate assessment. These resources can be found at the link provided. Additional resources related to this presentation and the LCI can be found at the links on this page. If you have any questions about this training, please contact Stephanie Thompson at 317-234-5601 or by the email addresses provided. Additionally, if you have questions about transitioning a student from IAM to iLearn, please contact Sarah Moore at 317-232-9153 or by the email address provided. Thank you for viewing this presentation.